You're watching MCC Cinemas Online.
In these stressful and uncertain times of quarantine, people from all over the world are seeking comfort in food. Comfort food can fix any bad day. It's typically high in sugar, fat, and/or salt. And the beauty of comfort food is that it varies from person to person. It's rooted in where you're from and who you grew up with. We asked 20 people from different cultural backgrounds to share what comfort food is to them. I'll start with mine. My favorite comfort food is kimchi jjigae or kimchi stew. I'm Korean American, and growing up my mom made kimchi jjigae pretty often for dinner. My mom's kimchi jjigae has that 손맛. 손맛 in Korean means like hand taste. The best way I can describe it is my mom's special touch. Even if I try to make my mom's kimchi jjigae here in New York City, I can't get that taste because it lacks my mom's special touch. So basically the flavors that you're getting are like spicy, salty, fatty, sour. It's basically everything that I crave when I'm missing my mom.
I'm Nigerian, and one of my favorite comfort foods has to be amala and okra soup. To make it, you take some yam flour and you pour it into boiling hot water, stir it up very quickly and it gets to this nice thick consistency. From there, you portion it out to whatever size you'd like for your meal, and then you can dip it into your soup of choice. And not only is it a super tasty meal, but after you eat it, it hits you and it puts you in one of those nice food comas. I remember sneaking into the kitchen as a toddler and trying to tear off small pieces of amala or like the ear seeds that they put in the soup and taking it back to my playroom. So of course now, anytime that I have it, I just automatically think of home.
I'm Trinidadian, and my favorite comfort food is bacon saltfish. Bacon saltfish is a dish comprised of bake, which is dough rolled out, and a fish called bacalao. It's a salted cod that we chop up, we boil, and we saute with sweet tomatoes and sweet onions. I think it's my favorite comfort food just because it brings back a memory of my grandmother. She used to own a daycare, and whenever she was making something with dough, like bake, she would roll up little pieces of the dough and give it to the children to play with, and we would just go crazy for those little pieces of dough.
My favorite Haitian comfort food is griot. Griot is fried pork shoulder that has a special cut where it has just the right amount of fat and just the right amount of skin on it. You would season it well, bake it briefly, and then fry it. So after that, it'll get that nice crispy on the outside, tender on the inside taste. I can remember being as a child, every Haitian gathering, family party, if you had griot on your plate that night, you knew it was gonna be a good night.
My comfort food has always been pastina, which is like a really unhealthy version of Italian wedding soup. It has no vegetables, it's really just pasta and meatballs. So the way that my mom makes her meatballs is really what I always crave. She does a mix of ground pork, ground beef, and ground veal. And then she adds in just 5 ingredients. So the 5 ingredients are salt, pepper, garlic powder, parsley, and cheese. It's not just like Parmesan cheese, it's always Pecorino Romano cheese. That's like the go-to key ingredient. Whenever I go home or whenever I'm like sad or sick or whatever, that's what I want my mom to make me, or that's what I like want to eat.
I'm from New York, and my favorite comfort food is grilled cheese. Growing up as a picky eater, grilled cheese was the #1 thing I could get from every single family member and every single restaurant, and it be almost the exact same every single time. So today when I make grilled cheese for myself, I just use white or wheat bread, and I use white American cheese. It reminds me of being best friends with my mom.
I'm Allison Brown, and today we're going to talk about beef patties because that's my favorite Jamaican comfort food. Growing up, my father used to bring home like a box of beef patties, and he used to put them on the table, and it was first come first serve, and if you did not get your beef patty, you would be tight. I love beef patties because of how diverse they are. You could get a beef patty, a callaloo patty, a ackee patty, any type of patty. My family is Jamaican. They're from Jamaica. I'm American. I was born here. But when we go to Jamaica, it's over. The patties are like hot and ready. They're delicious.
I'm from New York. I'm Dominican, and my favorite comfort food is mango. Mango is basically like mashed potatoes, but instead of potatoes, it's plantains. and it's a breakfast food, so most Dominicans will eat it in the morning. Mango is typically eaten with cebollas on top, which is onions, queso frito on the side, which is fried cheese, salami, which is a type of meat, and usually like some people will get a fried egg on it. Personally, I love eggs, so I always get it on it. The reason why mango is my favorite comfort food, besides the fact that it's delicious, is because it just reminds me of being in the Dominican Republic and just like being around great weather, sunny, like just an all-around great vibe.
My comfort food is pepper pot. It came from Guyana's first people known as the Amerindians. Pepper pot is a meal that is boiled with casserole and spices and any choice of meat. But my personal favorite is beef. It can be eaten with anything: bread, cassava bread, rice, anything you would like. Pepper pot reminds me of Christmas time and all the family time and our rich culture in Guyana.
My favorite comfort food is congee, a type of rice porridge. It's often eaten with yao zha guai, also known as a Chinese donut. There are also many different types of congee. I've had it plain, with dried scallops, with preserved egg and salted pork, and just white fish. Growing up, my mom would make this for breakfast some days, and she would also make it for me when I was sick and I couldn't keep any solid foods down. My mom passed away in...
Watch out, Florida. For months, outside gambling groups have spent tens of millions bullying Floridians to sign their petitions. And if they succeed, they'll take our money out of state.
They've got some nerve.
January of 2018. So the process of making congee and eating it reminds me of her love, her dedication, and her patience as my mother.
I'm Mexican American, and my favorite comfort food is tamales. Every year my grandma and her sisters get together and they all make tamales for us to eat on Christmas Eve. So it really reminds me of home and of Christmas time and of my family, so it's really special. My family makes the dish with shredded pork in a red chili sauce with green olives. Basically right now only my grandma and my aunts know how to make it, but they've started to teach me and my mom and my sisters how to do it, so that way we can pass it on to the next generation.
My favorite comfort food is Marmite on toast. It just has this really rich, really savory and quite salty flavor, and it's just really comforting, especially when it's put on some thickly buttered toast. I have very vivid memories of eating Marmite on toast, particularly when I was feeling a bit sick. I had an operation when I was 3 years old. I went under general anesthetic. When I woke up, the nurse said, "Is there anything we can get you?" And my first request was Marmite on toast.
My favorite comfort food is kutteo, or Thai noodle soup. Thai noodle soup is the Thai equivalent of what deli sandwiches is to New Yorkers, and you can customize each kutteo order to be your own. My go-to order is kutteo pet, so duck noodle soup with senmi, which are the rice noodles that are thinner than the ones you have in pho. And I only will eat it in this one noodle shop, and I refuse to have it elsewhere because they just make it so special. And it sucks because I can't really replicate that experience in any Thai restaurant here since they don't really specialize in that.
My favorite comfort food are Colombian arepas. Arepas are cornmeal patties. They're typically made with salt, water, and masa arepa. This is my favorite comfort food because when I was a kid, my dad and I did not have matching schedules at all. So by the time we would get home, I was already sleeping, and we wouldn't see each other till the weekend. And at the weekends, our favorite family time activity was to make arepas. It was also the first meal I learned how to make. So we're gathered in our tiny kitchen, mold them together, put it in a stovetop, and then once they were ready and hot, my dad would put butter on top, sprinkle it with a little bit of cheese, and it was delicious, and it's still one of my favorite meals.
My favorite comfort food is Puerto Rican pasteles de yuca. In Spanish, we call it a masa. It's like a doughy kind of thing. It has like, you can put stuff in it. So you can put like meat, chicken, you can put vegetables. And then they wrap it around a banana leaf and then they boil it. And we make them in bulk. And it takes 2 to 3 days to make. It's my favorite comfort food because my aunts and my mom, they sit around, we talk, and they're making this dish that is so reminiscent of our Puerto Rican culture.
My comfort food is lahmacun. It's a thin flatbread, almost like pizza, that's enjoyed in and around the Middle East. It's typically made by taking small dough balls and flattening them into really thin pieces, and then it's topped with beef or lamb, some vegetables and spices, and then it's cooked in the oven for just a few minutes. My family and I typically buy a dozen or so of them from Armenian bakeries or grocery stores here in LA because they make them really tasty.
My comfort food is ají de gallina. It's a spicy chicken mixture that my grandma used to make all the time. A yellow pepper that's found in Peru, ají amarillo, is mixed with, you saute some onions, then you're gonna add some chicken broth, milk, and crackers or bread. It's a nice little paste sauce. And then with some boiled chicken that you shredded. Ají de gallina reminds me of just Peru in general, living there. My grandfather had 50, 80 chickens, and my grandma would just grab one and it would be fresh.
I'm British Pakistani, and my favourite comfort food is a dish called aloo ki tarkari. The reason I love this dish so much is because it's a curry. It's very carby as opposed to one with lots of gravy. My mum usually adds to it aloo, potatoes, mirch, chili, namak, salt, haldi, turmeric, and then she adds something called panch phoron, which is a blend of 5 spices. You blend the spices, you fry them, you add your chopped up potatoes, add water, boil the water off and let the potatoes break up. It's really heartwarming, very flavoursome, and it also reminds me of coming home from school and cooking with my mum. Learning to cook with my nanny, my mum's mum, who passed away a few years back.
My 2 favorite Brazilian comfort foods are cheese bread and feijoada. For cheese bread, there's definitely not an occasion. It's just everywhere all the time. You can eat it at any time of the day. It's without a doubt the food that I miss the most because it's just the perfect snack. Feijoada is basically a giant black bean soup. It's definitely something that I grew up eating, and it's very iconic in Brazil. Almost everyone eats it.
My favorite comfort food has to be full, which is fava beans. And it's usually served hot, and it's really easy to make, so that's why we make it all the time. It contains tomatoes, onions, some people put tahina in it, and we put in it a lot of spices. Usually people eat it with pita bread. It's my favorite comfort food because over the summer my grandpa would make it for breakfast a lot, so I'd wake up and it would be there. So it reminds me a lot of home.
As social beings, social distancing may not be easy. Let's do what we can and make the most of it by enjoying our favorite comfort foods. Let us know what your favorite comfort food is and why in the comment section below.